Welcome to the WSO Weekly Wrap-Up, where I talk with my team about the 5 most trending discussions in the Wall Street Oasis community. Enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Weekly Wrap-Up. We have, I think, 3 topics today. Matt, you can get us started and we'll go from there.
Sure. First topic on the forums this week I found very fascinating. Around compensation in the investment banking realm, the question being posed, what does a single guy or girl do as an investment banking analyst with all the money that you're making? Some of the funny responses that I saw on the forum was one that, Pat, I think you'll enjoy a lot. Someone screaming Tesla, so dumping those big bonuses into Tesla quarterly or
buying a Tesla. I don't know, or buying
a Tesla. I was thinking, giving them the benefit of the doubt, hoping it was Tesla stock versus a depreciating car. But some of the other funny suggestions of what to do with the money or what people have done with their money: blew their internship money on luxury hotels, getting burned buying the dip the past year, or losing it all on sports betting. So I know, Pat, we've had these conversations a few times around just the amount of money IB analysts are making, in 2022, 2023, especially when compared to when you were an analyst. So, albeit funny suggestions aside, what's your best recommendation on what, an analyst should be doing with their money? If someone's making upwards of 150 grand coming first year out of school, what are some best practices and tips you should?
If they're in New York, they won't feel that wealthy until the bonus hits. If you're living off your base salary is high enough where you probably are stacking some, unless you're like living by yourself in like a 1-bedroom apartment or something and spending like $5 grand on rent. But if you're spending like, say, $2 to $3 grand on rent, you have a few, or like 2-ish on rent, and you have a couple roommates to make it feasible, make it so it's not insane. Yeah, you should be able to live off your base. That's the way I say, live off your base, bank your bonus. That's what a lot of people say. And then maybe like if it's a good year, you give yourself a little bit of a gift on the bonus side. But if it's buying an actual like Model 3, a Tesla or something, that seems kind of crazy, especially if you're in any sort of city. Seems like a big waste of money. Yeah, and I definitely wouldn't YOLO into XLF like one of our members said. Buying calls for next week that are expiring next week. That's just gambling. You're just gambling at this point. Hoping things turn out right. So yeah, Nabil, what do you think?
No, I think same. I mean, save a little, enjoy a little. Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it's easy to say that though. Like when you're in the thing, you tend to end up overspending or whatever, and then in hindsight, oh, where did all that money go? And then that's when you realize, like, yeah, you should probably saved a little more in that time. So yeah, that's usually what happens.
It's interesting because I find like the investment banking, or even just like the high finance careers in general, there is almost like that flexing mentality that exists, and more so than I find in other careers, so to speak. So I guess the main thing here is try to avoid that quote unquote lifestyle creep that comes, I guess, as an investment banking analyst. Don't let the ego go too high to your head. Don't be splurging on those Gucci loafers and Hermes ties.
Oh, man, we had people at Rothschild. We had an associate that was just the same loud guy I was talking about last week, who was like crazy. He was living this is like 2003. Okay, this is like 2000. He was living in like, I think he had one other person he was living in, but it was like a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, like beautiful, huge. It was like at the time, $6 grand or $7 grand a month, which is like the equivalent of like a $12,000 a month apartment nowadays, right? Yeah. So like say $12,000 a month apartment, like on an associate base, he's making decent money, right? But like he would be, the rumors are here, like he partied so hard and he had so much debt that like if he didn't get that bonus, he'd be like like a big bonus. So he
was filing for bankruptcy on
like,
a personal level.
I need like 300,000 at least for my bonus, or like like I think he would just rack up his credit card and just go nuts and just be partying hard on weekends, going to clubs and spending on bottles and, going out to dinner, spending thousands like on a given night.
Can you imagine if social media was as prevalent as it was back then? I mean, sorry, as now, as it, and applying that back then, this guy probably would have definitely ran himself broke if he didn't. Just given, the flexing mentality now that social media provides
makes it even worse.
It makes it even worse, right? So that's why, I mean, a question I had for you specifically was, was this flexing mentality always around in IB, then I thought to myself, I think it was probably got a little bit more amplified now, especially on the junior level coming in to have that
I think it's
flex.
always been. I mean, dude, there's videos back from like I think like
Or
15 years ago. AJ, you remember AJ? Have you ever seen that
no,
video? There's people who like he's like in his Porsche. He's like, yeah, I'm
yeah,
selling bottles. There's guys who create videos like
but was it always being done on the analyst level? I think that might be something that's different, where the flexing took place, but probably associate VP when you were, making the big money. But now when analysts are getting paid pretty sizable, though, like is the flexing still as common? Is
it's
right?
not
Like,
that common. People know to keep it like down, but there's the
Yeah.
occasional person who like makes the mistake of posting it on social media or like going
yeah,
above and beyond, like making it ridiculous. And that used to happen like once every few years. You'd have somebody like show up on the forums and like they'd be emailing me an hour later, be like, please take down the thread, and I have to keep taking it down and it keep getting reposted.
yeah,
So like there's usually usually what'll happen is something goes viral because they think they're like cool or whatever, and they post something and then it's really embarrassing. So
yeah.
yeah, it's a warning to everybody out there. Just be careful. Have all your social medias turned to private, your profiles, and then just even with that, be careful what you share. Assume that your bosses are going to see it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's the thing, right? You don't want to be flexing and have your boss kind of seeing that, right? Like they're paying you your salary.
or your
I
client,
think it's like
yeah,
that, or even
Yeah.
client, but it's always like that. At least I grew up in a mindset being like, especially in a work setting, you don't want to be showing up like you're going out and breaking, like making all this money, flooded with cash. And at the end of the day,
yeah,
when your boss is writing you your check, right? So I think it's that mindset. Yeah,
yeah.
if I have to guess, I think probably on the junior level now, it's maybe a bit more common because of social, but um, definitely have your fun. Just probably if you're going to splurge, keep it to yourself. I think the private life is probably better, anyways. Private life is definitely better than the social life.
Nabil's a big
Don't
spender. What do you think, Nabil?
No, just stay away from the cameras. That's what we always did. So
Well,
yeah.
you're in UAE. You got some good nightlife there.
oh yeah, yeah.
Clubs, and it's super expensive. I don't
It
know.
Yeah.
is, yeah. Yeah,
Well,
very
let's
expensive.
let's
But
let's segue to the next topic here, and I think it's a perfect little segue on why you probably should try to save a decent amount of money from your yearly salary. Is unfortunately a recurring topic on this pod is layoffs, and we saw UBS layoff, or at least rumors of layoffs have been kind of creeping through the forums. So I don't know too much on it, but Nabil, you want to kind of give a little bit of context on at least what you've heard on UBS, and then Pat maybe provide some commentary on in the landscape for just in general for
Yep.
investment banks with layoffs that are going to be coming, on how it's going to shape, at least the next year or so.
yeah, I think UBS just took over Credit Suisse, and now at the AGM they just announced, and there's rumors internally that they would be laying off about 20 to 30% of the workforce. That's like somewhere between 25 to 36,000 people.
Wow.
So, yeah, about a third of them probably are going to be laid off from Switzerland itself, and the rest I'm guessing is more international. So that's in the rumors, but we've already seen I mean, even in our forums, people are just going on. People are scared. Like many of them have been laid off. Others are still scared. Are they going to keep the jobs or not? So it's an interesting
Was
time. It's
was it all front office focused when you mentioned that 25%, or is that
no
inclusive
across
of you?
the board,
Oh,
because
okay, across the
they
full
just took over
environment.
Credit Suisse. I think they're going to go
Yeah,
undergo like some kind of restructuring. Just make sure first off, they're going to try to reduce costs.
yeah.
It's all under the debate, right? Was that a good acquisition? That was the whole agenda of that meeting. People were questioning people are still questioning whether that was a good deal or not a good deal. So they're going to definitely try to lower costs and save the business. There's a lot of risk there with that acquisition too. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how that pans out long term. But for now, like everyone there is pretty much scared. That's what we're seeing. I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, so now, if you were an intern coming into that, for instance, like this summer is your first year internship with UBS in their, say, investment banking division, Pat, any recommendations there? So obviously, maybe you're getting an email suggesting that role is no longer available for the summer. What's your best feedback, or at least advice on how to kind of navigate that
Yeah,
situation?
obviously, if you were at Credit Suisse, had an offer, obviously you should be looking, be talking to people. Even if you're at another bank, smaller middle market regional bank that has a commercial arm, you should be talking with, warming up your network if you haven't, just in case. Yeah, I think I think just across the street, it's going to be a pretty tough summer for interns. Just in the sense of when banks went and offered internship seats, none of this had started. So remember, they're offering internship spots sophomore year for junior summer. So literally over a year ahead of time. So when you're offering like the number of intern seats, when you're trying to judge like the number of intern seats you need or interns you want, and then deal flow dries up, and suddenly like there's a financial crisis where banks are failing, you can imagine, like, let's say you have a group of 100 interns coming in. Maybe you wish it was only 50 and you don't know what to do with the 100 interns. And then, at the end of the summer, you're not going to be able to extend 100 offers or even 90 or 80, which would be typical. But it's probably going to look closer to 40 or 50. And even that, you're probably like just doing it to keep some sort of rep. We do have statistics on intern offer rates in our company database. For those of you that are curious, if you have like 2 offers at bank X and Y, you can always go to the Wall Street Oasis industry reports. If you look at industry reports, there's a aggregate, or there's company review. There's a company review page, and on there you can look at like percentage of interns receiving full-time offers across banks. So you can get a sense, like some banks are like historically 95%. So there you're probably pretty safe because they're still going to try to like keep that rep. But if you're at a bulge bracket or a middle market bank that was historically in like the 60 to 70% range, I can pretty much guarantee it's going to be sub 50% this year.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that's tough. I had when I ran the live stream, I think yesterday, people were asking like, how do I get an internship? And they're like already juniors, and I'm like, or how do I recruit full time for in my senior year? And I'm like, look, it's too late for banking, almost for sure. I don't say anything's impossible, but it's going to be almost impossible if you don't have that junior summer, because the people coming out this year out of internship, there's going to be, hundreds if not thousands of kids who have a top internship on their resume that just weren't getting a seat because there just wasn't enough. And all those people are going to be gunning for like the 20 or 30 lateral seats that are open across the street. So it's going to be it's going to be a bloodbath. Really tough.
I'm hopeful this doesn't occur, but obviously UBS is a pretty big player in the overall like financial services industry. Do you think we see, or maybe some other firms kind of doing some layoffs as well? I thought I saw, don't quote me, but I thought I saw something with JP Morgan maybe discussing potential layoffs. But what do you guys think, both Nabil and Pat? Do we see this maybe happening in some other banks in the coming months, like some more contagion?
I think we've already had some. We've already had some prior to this, and then I think it gives cover. The more people that do it, and the more it's easier for the execs to justify like cutting like 5,000, 10,000, whatever it is to save costs.
Do you think we still see the same thing we saw last time, or in like the 08, 09 recovery, or when there was that big steep downturn that bonuses were still record high? We still foresee maybe that coming for like the senior execs at the firm? I'm just
I don't know.
Like, it's what I'm trying to get at is this
depends on earnings
from 08, right, Pat? So I know we've had this conversation where you were in business school actually when the last big real financial crisis occurred. Do you see any similarities now in terms of just like the overall outlook, maybe just like on an internal reflection? Like, I know we had this convo, you're saying they're in business school, the whole world seems like it's crumbling. You're sitting there, am I in the right spot right now in business school? What does the next year look like? I feel like it's maybe some similarities this year where, an individual maybe with that internships looking was all stoked and now sees like, financial services struggling and or pulling back. How did you navigate that back then? Is it just kind of like,
I wasn't even recruiting, man. I was Wall Street Oasis all the way. I was like, I want to go move to Argentina for a year.
But still, I mean, if I was you
scary
with WSO and I see the whole financial services industry collapsing, I'd even be worried just from.
We had members on the site be like, "Oh, Wall Street Oasis is done." Like, I'm like, actually, we have record highs traffic because everyone's trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
Engagement, yeah.
And we actually saw that a few weeks ago with SVB failing. Like, we saw traffic just accelerating and spiking. So it's kind of like a counterintuitive thing, but when like financial services is struggling, people need more of an edge. and you get that edge, you get that insight from a community. So yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, but like, yeah, I know my my classmates at Wharton were very it was very a nerve-wracking time, and people kind of just buckled down, and the expectations of where they were going to end up and where they ended up. I think there was kind of a little bit of a disconnect that everyone had to realize, like, well, we're lucky that the economy is even surviving. So I don't think it's going to be that severe of a downturn. I'm hopeful it's not. I think we learned some lessons the last time, although, it definitely could. It really just comes down to inflation, as far as I'm concerned. Like,
yeah. Well, I guess it's good to kind of see the job market then. I thought I saw some headlines today. I think the job market's a little bit softening with some more layoffs and even just these conversations in the financial services space now. So I do think, to our point that we had last week with you guys saying, you do want to see the labor market cool off. I think we're probably starting to see that slowly. Obviously, a lot of this macro information is
question
dated,
is unemployment still under 4%? That's the question. I don't know.
Well, see, we won't know that. That's the thing, right? That's I guess the interesting with macro, right? Everything's always delayed, right? So technically speaking, right now, currently, it could be, right? We just won't know until whatever that might be 2 months from now, which is, I guess, the struggle with the Fed. Obviously, you're trying to make moves off of 2-month, 3-month-old data, which is obviously difficult. But let's hope that this theme of layoffs every week slowly starts cooling here, so we have some different topics to discuss. But let's pivot here to the last one. We'll keep this one short. This one was mainly an interesting conversation in the forums around just experience level. It looks like the individual was talking about making the pivot from investment banking to the private equity realm. Any suggestions, guys, on how to kind of get that real tangible experience that makes you stand out when recruiting private equity? I know we had some preliminary conversations around industries do make a difference. But now, I guess from that point of view, if you are in a difficult industry group that maybe doesn't have good deal flow, or is maybe not a very universal or common deal group, what would be your suggestions on how to get that tangible experience to make that jump from investment banking to private equity?
I think the OP was just really nervous because they're like, I don't have any deal experience. Is theoretical knowledge enough to make it over? And this is actually more of a problem because private equity is recruiting so early. So like, if you're on cycle, you come right out of banking, most people don't have banking deal experience. So like, you often, as an applicant for private equity, if you're going on cycle, oftentimes you're talking about like your deals that you did on your internship. That's why having the right internship matters so much, and getting the right deal. So like, it's probably not, the theoretical knowledge isn't just enough to get to private equity. I think that the competition is high enough. There's enough kids who are lucky enough to get on deals where they're going to sound better on average, and it's going to look better in terms of what they did, that like, it's kind of a little bit, there's a lot of luck involved in terms of like where you get staffed and stuff. So it sucks if you haven't gotten any deals. I think if you can lateral internally, that's great, but like, that's not an easy thing to do either. So it's like easy to say, oh yeah, go lateral to a deal team that's really busy. One thing you could do is, if you're like, it depends on the firm, but you could go to the staffer and be like, hey, I'm doing a lot of pitches. You could just talk to him and be like, I was hoping to get on some live deals. Is there anything maybe across groups or across products that could help work on from teams that are struggling, or that have, maybe they need more help. And that way you can try to get at least 1 or 2 deals on your resume. I think once you got 2 or 3, it's enough. 2 is like enough, but like, especially if you kind of have more time and you're actually going in depth on it. So like, are you running the model? Can you talk to the M&A process? Can you talk through that? I think that'll show up well in interviews for the buy side.
Yeah, makes sense. So when you mentioned lateral, is going to be difficult to a different deal team. I'm assuming that's obviously internal laterals, but any thoughts on doing like an external lateral to maybe a separate deal team? You think that's probably going to be a little bit easier? I would assume so.
A different firm, you mean? Just jumping companies?
Yeah, to a different firm.
You can, but then you're kind of you're like, every jump you make from company to company is a little bit like you're burning capital, like you're burning political capital, because you're either stuck there. You either can jump again after under a year or a year, but then you're kind of stuck at your next place. So
Well, if the end goal
you
is
go
to
like
end up
6
leaving though
months,
to
9
private
months.
equity, isn't that fine? If the end goal is to get to private equity, you're going to be leaving the firm
Yeah,
either
but
way.
what happens now at the PE fund is going under or it's not going well, whatever, and you have to go again. Good luck recruiting if you've gone 6 months, a year, 6 months, 9 months. People are gonna be like, "What the hell?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the bigger thing is you're starting to narrow your option value if you start hopping too much. Like it just traps you a little bit more on if you make a mistake, you have to sit with the mistake for a couple years, which is hard to stomach, man. If it's a toxic environment or the fund's really going under, or like it sucks to have to be stuck in that environment. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I think ideally you're staying internal, you're staying at the firm for at least a year and a half, 18 to 2 years. If you can get a job, right a year out, there's a lot of kids leaving banking after a year, but they're going to a fund that's well known or whatever. And so that's fine. To me, that's fine because you're going to be at the PE fund probably for at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
So depends. I don't know if you guys agree.
Yeah, no, I agree on the idea being like you need to get that deal experience. Like the question being like, is the theoretical knowledge enough? I don't think it is because rather than like the theoretical knowledge, anyone could, brush up on that or study that to become, good on those specific topics. But I think what a firm would be looking for is how you, with the deal process, or sorry, with the deal exposure in general, is like how you manage the nuances of each deal. I think we've seen that from our own conversations that we have with firms that every deal is going to have its own nuances. So there's nothing that's going to be like a cookie cutter. So from like a knowledge perspective, there's nothing that's going to be applicable to everything. I think having that deal experience showcases how you overcome whether it's specific nuances or ways how you got in a client from A to B through that deal experience. I think is
like
way more important than the theoretical knowledge that you could study.
I mean, anyone can take our private equity interview course and you can go through private equity cases and know what actually like makes a good deal and talk to it and become better at that process. But if you don't have the transaction experience in your resume, then it's gonna be like, well, when have you done this? It's like, okay, here, like, so when have you actually put this in process?
Or just because transactions are never as cookie cutter as they seem, right? I think anyone's going to see that, and you can apply that to anything in life. Nothing's going to be as simple as it seems. So it's how do you deal in that, or how do you operate in that actual environment? I think is the more important piece, rather than knowing what an NDA is, fund flow. You could all know that, but if you don't know, one, how to push it forward, two, there needs to be some sort of customization or whatever you want to call it to the deal experience. That I think is where it's for a triumph. So I think
you can get like 80% there in terms of knowledge, 80-90% there, but in terms of like being the most competitive candidate, unfortunately, there's a lot of luck involved, and you need that deal. You need those deals.
Yeah, or even just how you again work within the team in itself, right? Like when you're compiling a team.
Unless you're on cycle recruiting, then the expectations are low because it's like, hey, we know you just got out of training, but then even then, like, okay, what did you do at your internship? Like, what was that deal?
Yeah.
And you see kids, they know how to put it in our free template, the experience. Interns will put their internship first, and they'll have like transaction experience as an intern because they know that's what PE wants to see, and so they know how to put it in that specific template. So
yeah, makes sense. All right, well, I think we'll call it on this conversation, guys. Great 3 topics this week, and we'll look forward to connecting next Thursday.
Thanks, guys. Talk soon.
And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, Patrick at wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.